Hi, I'm Debora J. Hollick, also known as a Smash Through Mentor. Wow, I cannot tell you how much fun I had on talking with Kevin and Son today. Kevin McLemore is an amazing host, and I just loved how we just melded together today and brought, I hope, a whole lot of value to you. I want you to subscribe to his channel, share it, enjoy it, and live life in wow. Please reach out to me. Best way is by email, Deborah@smashthroughmentor.com.
Let your feet do what it naturally is designed to do. If your ankles, your knees, and your back scream at you at the end of the day like mine do, I say go barefoot and free yourself of the pain. To learn more about going barefoot, just click on the link below and do what I do. If you want to live a better life in your barefoot shoes. Go to zeroshoes.com. So this is another episode of Talking with WIT Kevin and Son. As you know, we feature people you should know. I am your host, Kevin McLemore, a four-time published author, speaker, and as my new friend says, I'm a mindset messenger. I like the way that sounds. This episode is brought to you by R&K Productions and the 10 United Podcast Network. Through the power of your story, our mission is to uplift your voice, inspire, share stories and experiences and perspectives using the framework of teaching, learning, and modeling. Our purpose is hope, HOPE, helping other people every single day. Now, let me tell you, I don't have to twist your arm before I welcome in my new guest, but I want you to think about it. Whatever your objective is, successful people create a framework around their day-to-day life that sometimes enhances their lives, but in many times, like my guest today, they pour into others. This podcast will reveal the secrets of a highly effective life and a happier you. In better words, we're going to change the narrative. Today's guest will share with you and us the steps of becoming a happier you, a more productive you, a more intentional you. And if you stay with us long enough, you will learn the power of wow, WOW. Our guest, she's a powerhouse in the field of personal and team performance, a marksman of a speaker, a multiple time international #1 best-selling author, and a highly motivated friend. Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome a good friend of mine. It's Debora J. Hollick. I'm just going to call her DJ. How you doing, Deborah?
I'm doing fabulous, Kevin. Thank you for having me today. So
No,
excited to be here.
no problem. Thank you for coming in, sitting down with us, and just having a little talk. And like I said, we're going to share. A lot of people are going through some stuff. I want to share with you. For the first time we spoke, I wrote something down. And I'm going to read it exactly why I wrote it. I said, sometimes being yourself isn't enough. When you occupy a space that wasn't built for you, your true self becomes the voice of the people that need to hear you. This is what I wrote the very first conversation we had. Now, I'm going to ask you, what are you passionate about, Miss Deborah?
Well, I have a few things, but I'm really passionate about people bringing out their stories in their own words. That's one thing I'm really passionate about because I believe everybody has a story. And some are fun and exciting stories, and a whole lot aren't. So I think whatever realm it falls in, or genre or category, is important to share with other people. So that's one of the things. Another thing I'm passionate about is teaching people what thoughts look like. And I'm passionate about WOW. And WOW is an acronym for wonder, openness, and wisdom, so much of which you share.
All right, I can't wait to get to wow, but like peeling back the skin on the banana, there's always a story to be told before we get to the fruit. So I want my listeners, and I also want to hear your story because I love it. I want to get to know a little bit about you, how you came to be who you are. I want to know who influenced you. Who was the other marksman in your life that pointed you in the direction? I also would like to have you share with us how you got back on the tracks when life pressed you a little bit and you were derailed. So let's find out who Deborah J is.
Well, Deborah J grew up on a farm, and she had animals and siblings and fabulous parents and neighbors. And I actually really had a fairly charmed childhood, I'd like to say. I think so. We had lots of laughter in our house. We played cards. We weren't financially wealthy at all, but somehow my dad managed to have, quite a few toys that he wanted and different things. And one of my sayings my dad used to say was, "Don't worry, the bank will make more," whenever it was talk about money. I remember that as a kid. Oh, the bank will make more. Now I look back and I think, Dad, that wasn't such great advice. But it kind of gives a person a little bit of a more lighthearted feeling about not worrying about every little thing in life. Yeah, okay, money's tight. Well, the bank will make more money. It's the same, the universe will present whatever you need to you, is another way of saying that. So that's kind of where I grew up. I left home quite early, not in a fight or anything with my parents, but I got a really good job, really good at the time. And we only had one vehicle. So we lived out in the country, and my parents certainly couldn't be driving me back and forth. And so I had to convince my dad, who was, very adamant about providing for his children, that that I could do this. And I didn't know it then, but I recognize it now in my later years that I had some pretty good sales tactics. I was a pretty good sales gal back in
Right.
those days to be able to do that. So that's where I've started out. And as for things, that I've had many knockdowns, and, as many great speakers and wise people say, it's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get up and what you do when you get up. And so I think I've done quite well in that matter. And I've had some exciting and interesting experiences.
Right. Well, there are a lot of people that poured into you. You're one of those people when I talk about, that my circle of friends, which you're amongst those, um, you have a very high call to action. And at some point, someone instilled that, you're not one of these people that walks around with your cup half empty. Your cup is full and it's overflowing. Someone poured into you before you became Deborah J. Hollick. um, who is the person that kind of stood as that beacon of light that says that life can be good? Because I want to talk about, because you're a person, I talk about words when I speak, you talk about thoughts, and I think at the same conversation, we're having the same conversation. Um, but I like to know who is that beacon for you and why were they so important and where were you at that point when the light started to shine on you? There had to be someone. Coach Russo was my beacon.
Dr. Agnes Krawick was my mentor and became my wonderful friend over the course of many years. And she really was not just mine, but many people's beacon of hope. I was very blessed and became very close with her. And she was the most positive person and so much fun, and was always striving to learn more. She just was a knowledge sponge, and she just passed so much of that on to us. And she was the woman who taught me about curling photography and what thoughts look like in living color. And the first time she took my picture, it wasn't pretty, Kevin. It was fragmented. The auras in the fingers to show the energy were fragmented, and they were awful, and they were dark, and it was like I didn't have a purpose. I didn't have a, a mission. I was just like going through life and not being overly happy. And when I saw that picture, oh, it was like getting hit with well, one of my things is a 2x4, the metaphorical 2x4. And it was just shocking to me. And I realized I had to do some changes, because if this is what was showing in my energy, it had to be out there. So no wonder my life wasn't what I wanted it to be. And one of the things, I used to just, well, I still do, even though she's now made her transition, but Dr. Krowick, to me, was always doing wonderful things for other people in the sense of teaching. She was always sharing her knowledge, and she spoke, many, many places around the world and helped many, many people. And she said to me, I said to her one time, "Oh, Agnes, you just do so many exciting and creative and important things." And I said, "Wow," and I was in awe of her. And she looked at me and she said, "You're going to do much more than I ever have." And I remember thinking, I don't think that's even possible. So she was probably my greatest inspiration in so many ways. And she introduced me to law of attraction. She introduced me to just so much. So I'm forever in her debt.
When I look at your resume, you speak on thoughts. You speak to corporate America, you speak to everyday people, you talk about how to improve productivity, and the list goes on how you connect on all these different levels. And many corporations have brought you in order to change the mindsets of many people. Most people, without knowing, walk around and we're offended. Sometimes we're offended by relationships with our employers, and sometimes our employers are offended by the relationship they have with their employees. Sometimes we're offended by the life that we're living and thinking we deserve more, where we're not doing anything in order to have more. Sometimes we look at our circumstances and we don't see an opportunity to change our circumstances. And sometimes we seek happiness within others and we get let down and disappointed. I want you to set your GPS and tell me, as an employer to employee, as a human being, our responsibility to society and to our relationships. So there's 4 points. How do you set your GPS to happiness? And how do you get that person to change from being offended about their circumstance as an employer, an employee, a human being, or in your own personal relationship? How do you get to happiness?
I believe it's a choice. I believe happiness is a choice we make every day, many times throughout the day. It's easy to get offended. It's easy to, uh, just be annoyed. And yes, there's many things that we can choose to let us annoy us, but do we have to let it annoy us is the question. Do we have to? And I think that's a question when we start asking ourselves that. And I know I've asked myself that many, many, many a time. Do I have to let that annoy me? The answer is usually no. In fact, I'm almost going to say always, because everything is temporary, Ken. Everything's temporary. So we can, when people realize that, and especially when it comes to thoughts, because our thoughts are fleeting. I mean, we think, what is it, 86,000 a day, or however
Yeah.
many,
Hey,
240,000 a day. I don't know. I guess
yeah.
for different people, it's different things. So if we're going to take all those thoughts and harbor resentment or offensiveness, or just make choices that don't make us happy, we know what makes us happy. Inside, we know. And we know when we're judging other people, or we're criticizing, or we're angry or sad, we know we're not happy, because when we are those things, we know that we don't want to be that way. So if we don't want to be that way, we can choose what we do want, right?
Yeah, you're exactly right. I've seen a lot of people go out and buy these brand name label cars, and for 30 days they're happy. And then when the note comes, all of a sudden they second guess themselves. And like you said, everything with life is by choice. And I say chance or choice and the actions that follow. You and I, we share the same space of pouring into other people, and sometimes people pour into us. When I coach or I mentor someone, I always ask my opening question, and this is deciding. So I'm giving away one of my trade secrets, as is who I'm going to help and who I believe is going to help. I always ask this one question: does the ocean come to the beach, or does the beach come to the ocean? And then I sit back and listen. Now, one of the things I love about you is that you are a professional listener. And when you listen, you whisper. What do you hear when you're listening?
When I'm listening, I hear what's not being said.
Answer. I said good answer. Way to go. You see that? Keep my mouth shut on that one. All right. What do you mean? You listen to what's not being said.
Well, for many years, Kevin, I had a marketing business that was very successful. And I had contractors. And back in the day, this is before COVID, because COVID kind of, you know, put a damper on a few things, but it also was good in the ways it made me change. So back to that another time. But I used to teach my contractors when they'd be on the phone talking to people to listen to what's not being said or what someone else hasn't heard. For instance, when they're phoning and speaking to a receptionist hears the phone ring many, many times. And sometimes they don't hear it on the first or second ring because they've heard it so many times. And so I taught my people to listen for that in the background, because when you can say to that person, "Oh, do you need to get that call?" And they go, "Oh, I didn't even realize my phone rang." You're their new best friend because you've just helped them do their job and you've respected them. So I believe that when we listen to what's not being said, it's a respect and an appreciation for feelings and for emotions and energy, because whether we're face to face with someone in person or we are doing a Zoom chat like we are today, or whether we're on a telephone, there's an energy there. There's an energy in the tone, there's an energy in everything. So when we listen to what's not being said, it comes forward, and we can be of great service to people in that way.
You know something? I wish I could talk like you. Because the way you said that and whatever, I'm sitting here thinking, I'm preparing dinner. I've got the table set. I just poured 2 glasses of champagne. Boy, you just stole my heart the way you presented that. That was just beautiful, beautiful. I'm afraid to ask the next question. Um, that is well said. I am going to be as great as you one day, and that's a lead into what I'm going to ask. As humans, a good friend of mine always says, you got to be hungry. My Uncle Bill told me, he says, you got greatness within you. And I got to go out and get the world ready for you because the world's not ready for you. It took me a long time to figure out what my uncle was saying. But as human beings, we're always reaching for something. And as humans, we seem to fall short. We're the only living mammal, I would probably say the only living thing that doesn't actually reach for its full potential. A tree, as long as it's exposed to the sun, will continue to reach for the sky. You can sit there and like a lightning bug. I don't know what you guys call them in Canada, but I know it lives for 24 hours. And after it has given birth, or however insects do their thing, I forget the word, but they die. So they live and they die all in the same day, 24 hours. You know, a lion or cub becomes a lion, an elephant becomes king of the jungle. But we as people, we do less and trying to get more. What is being real? What is productivity to us? What does that really mean with being productive? Because I know everyone's trying to get someplace, but I see it every day. We're all going someplace, but we're not getting to where we need to go, and we're not getting there anywhere fast, even though technology is saying different. What does productivity mean?
Well, I think it means something different to every person, because being productive, resting, sitting sometimes when you need quiet, that's productivity. Sometimes going and taking action is productivity. So I think it's different for every person. I think sometimes it's good not to be productive because you are being productive in a softer, gentler, and more spiritual way, perhaps, just even in the quiet. In joy, I think there's huge productivity in joy and laughter that people don't realize. I think we've been kind of conditioned that, oh, if we're not working, we're not being productive. And I don't agree with that, Kevin. I don't agree with that at all.
I agree.
I think it depends on what a person wants to be doing. But I think we need to be productive in the silence. We need to be productive in the quiet. And I think that's really important. So productivity to me is, I guess, whatever a person, if it's helping a person achieve what they want to achieve in a kind and gentle way for them to get there. Because if it's just push, 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 push and do, that's a tough road to hoe, when you are, just constantly doing that. I believe you burn out. And so for me, productivity can be balanced. Productivity is certainly taking action and doing things, but what's being productive in the planning, being productive in the thought, being productive in compiling the words and everything, it's all important. So productivity has different stages and different meanings for all of us, I think. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense to me. I'm sitting here taking notes. I'm always a student. I teach all the time when I'm speaking and when I'm listening to people, and especially my friends like yourself. My grandfather always says, make notes, take notes. So that way that you have a reference point of someone that has greater wisdom to you that now becomes your own wisdom and you pass that on down to somebody else. But I do have this question. You have greatness within you, and I will say I've got to get the world ready for you, which is the reason why you're on Talking with Kevin and Son. But I was always curious. You have participated in a lot of other people's books. You're a bestseller. And I apologize because I have not got a chance to read your book. Wow, I wasn't able to open the document when I got it. And I normally read at least 90% of every single author's book out there. And I'm going to say this to you, listeners, even if you're not a reader, and if you ever said this phrase, I hate reading, the reason why you hate reading is because you haven't found a book you fell in love with reading. And once you find a book you fall in love with reading, you'll never stop reading ever again. And so I love reading every other author's book because I know the work and the time and sacrifice you put into it. But I do have to ask this question. As many times as you've taken part in writing chapters and anthologies and for other people, how come you haven't written your own book?
I'm working on two of them actually.
Okay. Can
And
we have some inside secrets?
well, one is called The Bully Lives Within. That's the first one that I'm working on. And the other one I'm going to kind of keep close to my chest for a little bit. But I first of all, I'd like to share with you, if I may, why
You can
I
share
like to
whatever one you
participate
want
in
to.
why I like to participate in anthologies. And first of all, technology has sped up, I think, our attention span to where sometimes we have the attention span of a gnat. So a lot of people don't want to read books from cover to cover. In fact, they claim that people read the first three chapters. That's what they say. Very few people get to the end of a book. So my thinking is one of the beauties in anthologies, and so many people who are doing them, is you can pick up a book that's got several stories in it. And I believe, we open a page and something jumps out. Maybe it's the name of the chapter or, the author, and it jumps out at you. And so you think, oh, I'm just going to read this. And it's a chapter. So it's 15, 20 minutes maybe of your life, maybe not even. And people have that time. And hopefully in reading that, they've received some value. And then because they receive value in that, maybe they pick the book up a little later on. So there's a variety for people in an anthology. And I believe also that, of course, the books were meant to find, we'll kind of, again, metaphorically drop on our head some way, somehow, whether it's physically in a bookstore or whether it's, jumping out at us on Amazon or wherever we see them or someone recommends them, and so I am writing a book of my own called The Bully Lives Within, and it's about how I allowed one childhood experience to basically hinder me for the majority of my adult life, and how it could have been changed for me. But obviously it wasn't supposed to be changed, because now I get to share it with other people, and hopefully I can help other people make it better for a whole lot of people. It's not going to be a big long book. It's not going to be difficult to read. It's going to be a little bit funny and a little bit sad, and hopefully provide a whole lot of value to people. So
Now, you just opened a door that I want to walk through, and I'm trying to position myself in my mind to say, um, well, one of my favorite quotes is, a smart person knows what to say. A wise person knows whether to say it or not.
true.
But I study human behavior, and I'm going to segue back to what you said about people reading a book. Here in the United States, we have a bookstore called Barnes and Nobles. When I was writing my book, Indispensable Games, X's and O's, I went and sat for 8 hours in Barnes and Nobles, and I sat and I picked up a book. I was in the motivational section or self-help set phase of the bookstore, part of the bookstore, and I started watching spend something. That is not supposed to happen, ladies and gentlemen. My phone is supposed to be off. Okay. But I apologize for the interruption. And, but anyway, going back to that, I sat for 8 hours and I watched people come in and they would read a book and they would put it down. I'm trying to cut it off. And they would pick the book up and they would read a little bit. And after 8 hours, I started to walk behind a couple of people and asked them why did they buy the book. And they said, well, I came in and read a couple of books. I said, I read, but I've never read that fast. And I realized that what happens is most people do what you do. They read the first 2 chapters of the book, sometimes 3, depends on how captivating it is. And they read the end of the book and consider it read. So I purposely, from that day on, made sure that the last 2 chapters of my book were the strongest 2 chapters, and the setup of my book, the first 3 chapters, made them read the rest of the book. And I would guilt them into reading the whole book, because I basically, when I wrote Dating with the Full Deck, I wanted to make sure that people read the whole book. So if you read the last 2 chapters, you were curious to see what the first 3 chapters, and the first 3 chapters took you to chapter 4 or 5, and before you know it, you were reading the whole book to the end. So now I'm going to question my sanity here. I'm going to segue from me to you, because this interview is about you, but you opened the door about your book, The Bully Within. What happened to you that was so traumatic in your life that you are still dealing with that? Because when I talk about the gap in the game, Dan Sullivan wrote a great book, is how do we get out of the gap and get into the game? That's the positive part of our life, and that's the negative part of things that happen that are unresolved. You can talk about it, or we can just move on and we can have some fun with the 12 next questions I have, which I'm only going to ask 3 of those 12. So shut me up if I make a fool of myself. You want to share that with us?
Well, first of all, I do read the whole books.
All right.
I don't just read the first 2 or 3 chapters, because when I start reading a book, I'm pretty much into the book. Something
Right.
about that book has spoke to me. So I like to read whole books. And some of them at the end, I'm not so happy that I've continued, but I like to read the whole book. But for those who don't, that's why I think anthologies are so good.
All right.
So Uh, that's one thing, but I agree with how you write your book. It's awesome because that's a great philosophy. So the thing that happened to me, I'm going to say that, in the big standard or the big scheme of bullying, because that's basically what it was, it probably might not sound like a big deal to a lot of people. But how a child internalizes things, I think, is what the book is really all about, is the fact that children hear and internalize things differently than what logic might dictate. So basically, it was an incident where I call him the big red-nosed bully, who towered over me, said basically that I talked too much. And there was some more derogatory stuff in there. And I hadn't heard that before. I was like 4. And didn't experience that in my family. And I was pretty bubbly and thought I was you know, all that in a bag of chips, I think. And so I was quite taken aback. And I remember looking at my parents, because this was a family friend visiting, and they didn't say anything, but I remember they had a really odd look on their face. And I grew up at a time when adults were right. You listened to the adults in my time when I was young. So my parents didn't say anything. So I guess I thought he was right. And I remember feeling at that moment, I still get emotional when I feel it. My light just diminished. Not quite out, but diminished. And while again, in my day in school, you had to do speeches and you had to speak publicly and you had to recite poetry and we had to do all these things. And I did it and I was good at it, really good at it. But I always felt I shouldn't be talking. I shouldn't be speaking. I talk too much. I wasn't good enough. People don't want to hear what I have to say. And that's kind of what the book is about, around that experience. And again, I'm gonna reiterate that I allowed that, because again, as I said earlier, it's about choice. And sometimes our choices are based upon, well, I mean, not sometimes, I would say probably the majority of the time, our choices are based upon our experiences, good and bad and the ugly. So for me, and I didn't even know it subconsciously for many, many, many years. I mean, I used to sing solo. I was told I was a good speaker, things like that. But that little girl voice in there, that little voice with the big red-nosed bully, was what became dominant until the last while. So that's kind of what it's all about.
Oh, I think that's going to
Did
be,
I answer your question?
matter of fact, it opened the door to questions about myself. And I know this is not a therapy session, but I've asked this question once before as a child. And as you know, we've talked about this off camera. I grew up angry, and football saved my life. Everything I learned about life, I learned playing high school football. But I was one of those kids that if someone was being bullied, and my youngest son did the same thing, and I was the person that championed the weaker kid, and I went heads up with the bully in every level of high school, elementary school, primary, preschool, even in college. I took down the bully. And then I started to realize I was talking to a friend, and I'm going, does that make me a bully? And so you're a person of thought. And I just want some clarity so I can clear my own head, because I'm second guessing myself. If I defend someone that needs to be defended against the bully, do I become what I'm trying to avoid being?
I think it depends on how you go about doing
I knocked the shit out of them. I mean,
it.
nothing to be proud of. It says, I hate people that prey upon the weak. And my grandfather used to always tell me, he says, a good run is better than a bad stand. And I've started to pull back a little bit, and I started to use something more than my physical attributes as my uh, weapon of choice, if I can say that, and more so my words and making a difference in people's lives. So I did change, but I just wanted to hear from you because you're much wiser than I'm ever going to be. And I hope that once you write this book, because I do journal and I've journaled since 1973, and I was going to ask you, do you find value in journaling? And does it help? Does journaling help um, with the answers that you have questions that you have no answers to?
For me, I don't journal as much as what other people maybe do. But I go within a lot. I like to meditate. I do write. I like, I do a lot of gratitude and that sort of stuff. And I've done writing in different ways. But I want to go back to your question about, does that make you a bully? I think one thing that's really important to say here um, is I think we sometimes do things in the wrong way for the right reasons.
Thank you.
And I think we all do that. And so I think that brings us to intention, which I think is another extremely important thing in life, is what is our intention? And I think we have to ask people, ourselves that all the time. What is our intention? So I'm going to leave that there. As
It's
for,
go
sorry, go
ahead.
ahead.
No, go ahead. I interrupted. I apologize.
That's okay. So, getting back to journaling, I think for me, more than journaling, something that's helped me a lot is writing letters, never mailing them. They never see the light of day to anyone else. And then I like to write letters of what starts to come. So some people might call it automatic writing. But for me, it's a little bit different in the sense that I just, you know, decide on, okay, I need to write here for to get something out or to resolve a situation for myself within myself. And so then I'll just, the name will come to mind as to who I need to write for, whether it's because I'm angry with them or because I need to forgive them but you know what I found, Kevin? I write more letters to myself than anybody else. And I write everything down. To quote my friend Mila, I just blather it down and I write until I can sign that letter with love. And then I can release it and I usually burn them because to me and I like to burn them when there's a full moon, to be honest, because it just releases them to the energy of the moon and new beginnings. So that is kind of my thing.
All right. Well, believe it or not, as much as you may not think you're journaling, I call that self-talk when I tell people that when they write these things down. And self-talk is good because a lot of times when you have more questions than answers, writing these things down is better than therapy because what happens is you find answers to questions, and burning those means that you can move on to the next question. So congratulations. Um, Before we end the show, all right, I'm going to share something with you. I'm going to ask you one question. How do you not feed your distractions? I mean, everyone walks around with a little appliance. You heard my phone go off in the background. It was supposed to be out of the room and turned off. It's not supposed to be interrupted, so I apologize. We're all glued to
Didn't hear it.
technology. You didn't?
Didn't hear it. No.
Trust me, someone will write to me and goes, "How do you do a show and let your phone go off, whatever?" And I would say, sometimes stuff just happens. All right, it takes a lot to produce a show like this, but How would you tell someone when I say stop feeding your distractions? What does that sound like to you when I say that phrase?
Well, I think we all can get distracted often. And again, I think uh, our current world as it is feeds into that with headlines and scrolling and the whole thing. So for me, I have to set a clear intention. And I'm going to go to what Abraham Hicks calls segment intend. And so for whatever I'm going to do, I segment intend for that time. And I have an intention that I set, and then I'm focused. And I'm focused for that length of time, however long I've decided that's going to take. And so that's how I do it. I agree with you. Putting your phone out of the room. I think our phones are the biggest distraction we have. I'm one who, when I am working, I like silence. I know a lot of people love to have background music or movies or whatever going on, and that's great for them. But for me, I like quiet. I worked in office settings for many years where, there were lots of people and lots of distractions. And, I used to go into work 2 or 3 hours early because I could get stuff done. And then the coffee was made for everybody who came in the morning.
Yes.
So I'd go to work early because I had that option and I loved it. I loved being there 2 or 3 hours and oh, I could produce work like no tomorrow. So I think again, that's different for everybody, but for me, that's how I do it. And I like to write down my intentions. I like to write down what my intention is for that task or that space in time or whatever it is. And maybe my intention is just to enjoy it, just enjoy whatever happens. Sometimes that's my intention.
All right. I am making notes. Deborah J. Hollick does journal and doesn't know it, but putting that down there.
Well, again, different strokes, right?
Different strokes. Um, how do you
But
avoid
look, I learned
temptation?
something today.
What's that?
Did I journal?
That you journal,
And
that you
didn't
do.
know it.
Now, big question. Everyone, I mean, I struggle with it. I mean, when you're in a space that you're extremely successful, people come at you from all different directions and they request a lot more than you can give sometime. And I already know your heart. You want to help everyone. You've seen the bottom of my emails. You're only as strong as your last no. How do you get to know being as successful as you are right now?
Well, um, probably not as often as I should. I
I
don't
know.
get to know. But I've started to kind of become more conscious of, okay, what really makes my heart sing and what am I willing to do and what am I not willing to do? And so I'm finding that the more I'm doing what I'm willing to do, I get more of that in a good way and not so much of what I don't want to be doing. So again, I believe in law of attraction. I believe our thoughts, thoughts are things. And like Mike Dooley says, thoughts are things, choose the good ones. And so the more we do that, the more we get what we want. And so I've just my no's have come more from not coming, if that makes any sense, of not
Mhm.
having to say no. And I find that I believe in being there for people when they need me, my friends or whoever happens at that moment in time. If I can be of service, then I'm going to be of service because I think it's important. But I can't be of service if my cup isn't overflowing first. If my cup isn't full first, I can't be of service to that person. And that's one of the things I continually say to people. I just said this yesterday to a friend of mine. If you don't take care of yourself, who's going to take care of them? Because you're overdoing it. And she said, yeah, I know I'm feeling it. So I said, so you know what? Be kind to you. You just gotta take the time for you. And so that is one thing that I really believe that when we become so depleted, we don't have anything to give anyone else.
Boy, those are some very powerful words, very powerful statement, and that's going to sit with me for a minute, maybe a day or two, maybe for the rest of my life. Um, you don't know I'm going to say this, and you're a person that knows thoughts, and thank God you don't have that camera, so you don't see my energy around me, because I don't want you to predict what I'm about to say. But this year, you know, in my podcast originally, I wanted to showcase people that we should know. I wanted to be the everyday person's um, podcast where we can champion those people that are doing great things in our community that no one knew anything about. I wasn't looking for likes. I wasn't looking for 100,000 followers, whatever. I was looking to make a difference and to tell people's story. But I've expanded that because I realize in the circle of friends that I have some highly successful friends that are living a highly effective, successful life. And I want to know your secrets before we sign off. And because I want to know your secrets, the list of 100 people that I'm showcasing this year, I would like your permission to add you to that list.
Well,
Ms. Deborah J.
thank you very
Hollick, do you
much.
mind? Would you like to be on that list of my top 100?
I would be honored to be on that list, and I thank you for that.
All right. So, with that said, before we end this show, matter of fact, I'm going to stop saying we're going to end the show because my relationship is just beginning. So, I don't look for an ending. When God takes me off this planet, we'll just go to act two. So, tell us your secret to living or secrets to a highly effective life.
Well, one of them for me is looking for the wow. That to me is not just a title of my book, live life in wow. That is really how I like to live my life. I'm not going to say I do it perfectly all the time, but the majority of my time, I really do look for the wow, look for the positive, whatever you call it. But wow for me was actually given to me by, you can call it spirit, you can call it the universe, call it angels, call it whatever you want. But live life in wow, that phrase was actually given to me audibly one day while I was doing my gratitude journaling. And I went, what? And it's again, it was live life in wow, wonder, openness, and wisdom is what they said. And I went, oh, I really like that. And so I pursued that, I'm going to say that conversation, if you will, or that vibrational chat. Oh, I like that. Vibrational chat. Oh, I really like that, Kevin. Write that down.
I will definitely do that.
So, and they told me that I was going to do um, events. And I went, what? Yeah, and that's what I was going to do, is what they said. And I'm like really quite confused. And so I said, well, okay, if you want me to do that, you better give me some help. Well, in between, I ended up moving and, renovations and yada, yada, yada. And so then I was going to, start the events, and then COVID hit. So I say, okay, you guys, because that's how I talk to them. Now what? Can't do an event now, an in-person event. Now what? Oh, you're going to write a book. What? What do you mean I'm going to write a book? Yeah, you're going to write a book. So that's how it all came to be. And I've, I really do think that for, well, from meeting Dr. Krowick, meeting Agnes, my mentor, I really did start looking for ways to feel better, ways to look and find the positive in things, in all situations, Kevin. And that's what I mean when we look for the wow. We don't just look for the wow in the joy of life and in the fact that, oh, this wonderful thing happened to me. It's easy to find the wow in that. I think you'd agree. But when
Mhm.
you got to look for the wow in situations that maybe aren't so good, you know, um, we've all had situations in our lives that weren't pretty, and that were scary, and that sort of stuff, and we're hard. Life can be hard, and for a lot of people, life is really, really hard. So when we can start looking for the wonder, the openness, and the wisdom in every situation, it's interesting what happens. Because all of a sudden, even though those hard situations are still there, they don't quite feel so hard when you're looking for the goodness of it, when you're looking for the wonder. You look, what did that open me up to? So, yeah, so that was a really tough situation I went through. But what did it open me up to? And what is the wisdom that I now have the privilege of sharing with other people? That, what did your grandpa say? Your grandfather says, reach one, teach one, right? Did I get that quote right?
You got it right.
I love that. I just love that. I'm going to put that in one of my books. Quoting
You
you, you're
can
going to
use
have to
it.
give me your
You can use
grandpa's
it.
name. You're going to have to give me your grandpa's name so I can give him acknowledgement. But I love that. Reach one, teach one. So when we get the privilege of being gifted something like I was gifted, it's not only a privilege, it's my honor and it's my duty now, I think, and responsibility to share that as much as I can. So that's, I think, to answer your question in a very long and convoluted way. That's
You,
my
you know
answer.
something, don't worry about being long-winded. I've been living with a long story short all of my life. I can care less of what they say about the standards of how long or short a podcast should be because who listens? I firmly believe if the content is worth hearing, if you got a story to be told, like we did when we were young, we'll stand around and we'll listen. So I appreciate your share. I will ask you one more question before I close. Um, I have a very unique show, and I'm taking ownership of it. Didn't set out to have this happen, but when everyone told me how many, you got to get the likes up and get the numbers up, whatever, I said I really didn't care. I said I'm going to build this podcast the same way I built my business and successful life that I've had. I've created great relationships. I created a circle of friends that have a high call to action. And I said, I only want people to support me that have the same mindset. My friends and my family, they don't drive by an accident, they stop to help. And so I'm going to ask you this question. If you had one ask, A-S-K, I don't want anyone to get sideways because the way I enunciated the word, my head is straight today, not one of those TBI moments. If you had one ask or one dream to come true, and the reason why I'm asking is I want you to sit back. To this very date, I've had 6 people that have answered this question, and a total stranger or someone that's listened to this show has granted them their life's wish. Now, granted, a lot of us live out our whole entire life and not have one dream ever come true. This time, I would like you, if you had that one ask, what would that be?
I would like to become, I don't want to say famous because I don't think I want to be famous, but I would like to be known widely for the WOW movement. I really, really want to help people see things differently, not through rose-colored glasses, but with intention to find the wow. I would love to be known for that, whether it's through the books, whether it's through the events that we're going to be having, hopefully yearly. Um, I've got many ideas that have been given and gifted to me, and that's really what I would like to be known for. That and showing people what thoughts look like, because I believe those two things are keys to life.
Well, I've got a strong feeling, and we're all energy and we all have these thoughts. And once you put it into the universe normally comes back with an answer. I know that my good friend Les Brown, I know Tony Robbins, and all these other great motivational speakers are everything runs a cycle. And I think the tables are turning to where the new young champions are coming in. That's people such as you and me, Corey, such as a bunch of other people that are within our circle. I think once we put our heads together and put together our own tour, not only with corporate America, welcome in the tour of champions, the rest of the world, high school students, college students, women's groups, men's groups, all alike, individuals that have not been recognized because their choice is different from other people. that we can speak on, talking about life's experience, our thoughts, our behaviors, and how we can make a difference and be the change to be. So I'm going to say this, and I want everyone to sit on this for a little bit. To grow, you must make some mistakes. To have confidence, you must address your anxieties. To forgive yourself, you must hold yourself accountable. To learn, you have to unlearn some stuff. To exist, you must show up as more today than you were yesterday. And to understand the power of your words, and I'm going to add, because of you being a smash through thought mentor, you must show up and you must be more and understand the power of your words. And this is coming from me, your mindset messenger. This is coming from Debora Hollick, another mindset messenger. This is coming from Corey Poirier, another mindset messenger. George Lee. I can go on and on with the many people that have poured in my life that have granted me the title as mindset messenger. And with that said, if you like what you've heard on this show, go to our YouTube page at R&K Productions and Network, and you can subscribe and follow. And this is probably one of those episodes that you should share. I don't ask all the time to share. That's what we're supposed to do in this podcast world. But I will say, if you're a person that has a high call to action, then I'm going to ask you to subscribe. I don't want likes. I don't want hearts or whatever. And you can make comments. I grow from what I hear. But if you're a person that has a high call to action, there's a circle of friends and there's a whole world that needs your attention. And if you can help someone else, it's your duty to do so. My grandfather always said, when you get to a place in life that you can help someone else out, he said, it's your duty to do so. He said, reach one, teach one. And with that said, let me back up just a little bit, like peeling the banana. Debora, is there anything that I missed that you would like to share with our audience before we sign off?
I don't think so. I'd love people to reach out if they'd like to be in one of the books as a seasoned author or a new author. Love helping new authors too. And as you say, words are important. So sharing life and experiences, your own words, I think is a legacy we can all leave, and everybody has a story.
Everyone has a story to tell. And I'm going to also remind you that if your feet, your ankles, your knees, and back hurt the way the mind has, 7 days after wearing zero shoes, pain went away. Not saying that that's going to happen to everyone, but I know your feet are not supposed to be in coffins. They're not supposed to be elevated. And if you want to learn a little bit more, go to the videos and go to www.zeroshoes with an X, XERO shoes, and learn more, or click on the show link to learn about Zero Shoes. I just want to thank you for coming on the show. I want to thank you for allowing me to share your story and allow my listeners to become your listeners. And I hope your listeners become part of this show. And if you ever want to come back when you have your book and you want to talk about it, this seat is always open. All right. You're on that list now of the top 100 highly effective people that live in a successful life. Thank you, DJ, Miss Debora J.
Thank
Hollick.
you.
Thank you for coming on the show. And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, the only thing I can say right now is we fade to black and we're out. Thank you. Till next time.